Howdy folks, Joe Howard here. All right, so the WPMRR Virtual Summit is officially kaput. It is over. Finished last Thursday. Day one was on Tuesday, day two on Wednesday, and the final day on Thursday. So, man, I'm pretty proud of how it went. Lots of great talks, lots of great speakers, great interaction within the community. I think a lot of good questions were asked, a lot of good questions answered by speakers, and yeah, I think it was definitely an event that helped folks to responsibly grow their MRR and hit MRR milestones. So the one thing I did want to make sure that folks did know about, whether you were able to attend or not, all the talks, again, are going to be available on the WP Buffs YouTube channel. A couple ways that you can get notified when that happens. One is to, if you haven't already, to join the WPMRR community and join the Summit live stream and update space. We're going to post there when those are live, so you'll receive an update whenever we post there. Just make sure your notifications are set up within Circle. Second way is just to go to the WP Buffs YouTube channel. You can search on YouTube, or you can just go to wpbuffs.com/YouTube, and you can subscribe to the channel. That will give you notifications when we post new content, including podcast episodes. We want to do some more tutorials for WordPress in the future, but definitely for Summit videos. We're going to have a whole new playlist for the 2021 talks, so you get notified that way. Other way is, honestly, just keep listening to this podcast, because I'm sure I'll say something here in the intro on a future episode once those videos go live. So that's also an easy option. Okay. Community. Everything for WPMRR community is at community.wpmrr.com. In terms of how that's going to play a part moving forward, obviously this summit was 3 great days of content and actionable stuff, so you can continue to grow your MRR responsibly. But the community is going to be around 365 days a year, not just 3 days a year. So I'm hoping that we can take the momentum from the summit and really push it into the community. If anybody wants to discuss certain talks or certain challenges you're having, or just work on some things together, the community is a great place for that. I'm going to be posting a lot of content in the next probably month or so. I'm looking at my calendar right now, and I've got also for anybody who wants to, you can schedule a lightning chat with me just to talk about your business. I'd love to get to meet new people and learn more about your business anyway. So I have 3 of those lightning chats scheduled every week for the next 3 or 4 weeks. So I'm going to post all those videos. I'm going to post the learnings. I'm going to tag some other WordPress experts who I think can come in and really have also good advice on that. So a lot of activities can happen in the community around that. So make sure you are in there and checking out that stuff if you want to actively participate. Around the summit videos too, the videos of all the talks, I haven't exactly decided what I want to do with those with regards to the community, but I'm sure there's a good opportunity to take some of those videos, re-watch some of them. Maybe we could have some watch parties or something. We could all jump into a Zoom room and watch the videos and take notes and then share some of our learnings or some of the things we plan to do. That might get some nice kind of group dynamics going. Oh, that person's doing that. That makes me think maybe I should try that, or maybe I should try X, Y, or Z. So I don't know yet, but I'm sure there'll be something around rewatching some of those videos within the whole community. So stay tuned for some of that as well. Okay. Summit stuff over, community stuff talked about. Let's jump into today's episode of the podcast. So I got to have Lucas Prigge on the pod today. Lucas is the manager and heads up sales at Kinsta, who is one of our sponsors for the summit this year. So thanks again for Kinsta for being a sponsor. So you saw the title of this podcast episode already. It's really about sales specifically. And I don't know about you, but whenever I go into something about sales, or start listening to something or reading something or watching something that's about sales, I'm always kind of I'm thinking a little bit is this going to be too salesy, or is it going to be someone telling me always be closing or always be selling and that kind of sales stuff? This episode was the opposite of all that. Lucas is awesome. It's clear why Kinsta is so beloved in terms of hosting solutions, because their quote-unquote sales process doesn't feel salesy at all. He talked about how they scaled sales at Kinsta, some of the technology stack they use for sales, which is actually somewhat similar to the technology we use here at WP Buff. So definitely tune in to hear some of that about some of their technology that they use. The big focus here was really on the customer journey and setting expectations correctly so that when people talk to the sales team and then sign up for Kinsta, they have a great experience based on the expectations that were set around customer journeys. Lucas really hammered home. He was like, this is maybe the most important piece, is that every customer starts at a different point. Some are new to WordPress and haven't heard of Kinsta at all. Some are WordPress professionals who are coming to Kinsta who have all that WordPress knowledge, who don't have any of the basic questions when they have some advanced questions. Lucas really stressed it's so important to meet every potential sales lead where they are in their customer journey. And that just scratches the surface. Lucas talked a whole lot more about that in the episode and really goes into detail. So I'm excited for this episode. I'm excited for you to hear it. So cool. Without further ado, here's Lucas Prigge. Enjoy today's episode. All right, we are live this week on the podcast with Lucas Prigge. Lucas, I think I said your last name right. I was practicing a little bit before we got started, but I think I got it okay. Tell folks a little bit about you and what you do with WordPress.
Sure. Yeah, no, you got it absolutely right. And I am Lucas. I'm from the Netherlands. And what I do with WordPress is, quite a few things. I've been active with WordPress for at least 10 years, for private users. That's when it all started with some, personal projects. I entered the industry really by working for a local Dutch WordPress hosting company. 7 years ago now, or even 8 at this point. Kind of evolved through there. And now I've been working with Kinsta for over 2 years. And my role there is head of sales. And like I said, I still run some side projects that are built with WordPress, although it doesn't necessarily serve WordPress users, but it is definitely the glue that keeps my digital businesses, my digital products together for sure.
Totally. Yeah, we were kind of joking before we jumped on here, okay, I work at Kinsta, but I have some WordPress side projects, and I was like, that sounds like par for the course. So many people I know in the WordPress space are they have their main thing, and then they kind of have their side WordPress things, so I'm totally there with you. And I want to jump into sales at Kinsta stuff. I mean, that sounds really cool. But before we do that, I want to ask you a little bit about this green screen setup you have here, because it looks really cool. You've got this nice background, the Kinsta logo kind of hovering. People who are listening obviously can't see it, but people watching on YouTube, they see this cool Kinsta logo kind of floating. Is that something that is it pretty easy to set up? I mean, most people hear green screen, they're like, whoa, sounds outside of my expertise. But these days, it's probably not too hard.
No, it isn't. It is just a green screen, which you can purchase for about $200 if you want to get a good one. It's a small investment there. And then you just got to have a camera. My camera is far from the best, but it still does the job. And with some settings in a program called OBS, Open Broadcast Studio, it's a free open source application. You can then kind of create these layers for streaming video, also recording video even. And that allows me to have, the pretty Kinsta purple in the background and the Kinsta logo in the foreground. It's just some layers, takes a couple of minutes to set up, and there we go.
OBS, is that's something I think if people are listening and they're like, what do I go check out? They can go, go Google OBS, open source, software, and you can find it. So
you'll find it that way, yeah. It's a great tool. I also use it for recording videos. I have a YouTube channel, and it does the job without fail. It's also the tool many professional YouTubers use, I think, especially also in the tech scene, if they want to, record their screen while having themselves in the corner over there.
Yeah, I really like the fact that it's open source. Do you find that you, because it's open source, that you, does it record your audio and video and stuff and then store it someplace? And if you does store it someplace, do you have to have your own server space somewhere, or does that open source software actually house it for you? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's very flexible. So you can select the outputs folder and you just press start record. It counts down. And when you press stop, the MP4 or whatever other video format you decided will be the recording will be stored as such in that output folder. So that can be private, local, or on the cloud, or wherever else. I'm a big fan, as you can tell.
Very cool. Usually in terms of picking the software you're going to go with, I like to try and opt towards the open source solution. In a lot of cases, sure, the open source solution may require a little bit more work, a little bit more maintenance, or a little bit more, time and effort to set up, or whatever. It just kind of usually takes more time and effort. But the pluses are really nice, and the fact that you like those recordings, like you own those recordings in the whatever, especially if you have your own server space, you can have full ownership over that. I use, this application we're in is Riverside.fm, which is great software, but it's still technically a closed, system. If they decided to boot me one day or whatever, I'm pretty sure running a WordPress business, content is not high on their list of things going to kick off. But who knows, right? That's not exactly the point. I could lose access, and then they could, wear all my recordings. If they're all just stored here in Riverside, that's a problem. So anyway, OBS, green screen recording, open source software. We just wanted to go into sales, but I had to ask you about that too. But cool. Sales also at Kinsta. So you wrote down some, every time I have someone book a recording session here, I just ask them to list some of the stuff they wanted to talk about. You listed, everything you listed was I totally want to talk about that. But let's start off and I'd love to know a little bit about what your role entails as head of sales at Kinsta. Obviously, give people a little bit of background. Most people who are in the WordPress community or WordPress space know of Kinsta or have heard of Kinsta or have tried to Google some help with WordPress and found a Kinsta article, right? So Kinsta's pretty well known in the WordPress space. But in terms of sales for a hosting company, that's an interesting position. I don't know if a lot of people know exactly what's entailed in terms of sales for a hosting company. So as head of sales, tell me a little bit about your day-to-day, the team you manage. What are you up to every day?
Yeah, sure. Well, in short, it's all about helping the sales representatives that I have in my team, which is a globally distributed team of approaching 10 sellers at this point in time. We're growing pretty quickly, and that team is speaking up to 8 languages at this point, and located really in North America, in Europe, and in Asia. So all the 3 main, regions, so to speak, and all the time zones covered. Yeah, making sure that they're able to do their job, and that job is basically helping people find the right hosting plan for their needs with Kinsta, because it is a pretty flexible platform, and hosting is a technically challenging topic for many. And we are there to understand that and listen to them and help them find the good fit for their needs.
Yeah, I want to save that multi-language piece because I think that's something I don't see super often. Actually, before I forget, let's just dive into the multi-language piece because I've seen Kinsta content online, and I have this notification on in Ahrefs, which is our SEO software, and it gives me a heads up when I get when our website gets a backlink from someplace else, because I like to know, and then I like to shoot someone an email and be like, hey, thanks, that's cool. When I get them from Kinsta, I usually get 8 or 10 because I get one from the English version, but then I get more notifications from the many non-English versions that you publish online. So obviously, just writing content, kind of top of the funnel stuff for multiple languages. You can drive traffic to your website in multiple languages, which is great. You can kind of really get a good hold about, of the global market for hosting. But if you're going to do multi-language content, and if you're eventually going to really be able to drive revenue from all different places of the world where people speak different languages, you have to do start with multi-language content, but then go down into multi-language marketing and multi-language sales, and then eventually multi-language support and multi-language dashboards. Yep. For a smaller company, that's an investment that I would think would be pretty crazy to make that initially. But Kinsta is obviously a somewhat big company, so it sounds like that investment is being made over at Kinsta. How is that? How does managing a team of people speaking 8 different languages, what challenges are you seeing every day? I mean, I'm sure it's nice to be able to speak a different language, but I'm sure you run into challenges trying to manage that multi-language team doing sales in a lot of different languages.
Sure. Well, it's true. Kinsta is deeply committed to growing worldwide, internationally, because, we do believe in our products, and we want to make sure as many people as possible can enjoy it and benefit from it. So The cool thing I think about the product and also sales itself as a skill, it kind of bridges the language barrier in that, it doesn't really matter as much which language you speak. Like if you can provide it, that's the thing that you just need to provide. The product itself doesn't change. Sales best practices don't really change. We're all human, and human psychology applies everywhere. There are absolutely local differences, don't get me wrong, but it's not as challenging necessarily as it may seem at first glance. What it is, though, is a lot of work. And we have a team dedicated specifically to global expansion and translations. So it's a whole separate function within the company with dozens of team members there conducting market research to help find which markets might be a good fit, and obviously a lot of translators, making sure it all works properly for international customers. Yeah, and in sales that also has its effects. We have a sales content library that needs to be translated and updated. Obviously, the conversations in real time or via email and live chat take place in those languages. So I guess the one challenge for me as a leader there is that I cannot always coach as effectively as I could for sellers whose language I do speak. So I speak a few languages, actually. I'm pretty lucky there. I speak English, Dutch, German fluently. I understand French and Spanish to a limited degree. And so those are 5 languages we all serve with the Kinsta sales team, and I can help those sellers relatively well. But we also have somebody who sells in Japanese, for example. So I have no way to deeply, analyze a sales call that they may have made with a Japanese-speaking lead. I can use Google Translate to analyze an email conversation, but it's still not really perfect, So I guess that's the main challenge that comes, as well as the time zone difference. Although there too, I am pretty lucky being based in Europe here, really centrally located in between the two extremes of the time zone, so to speak. In other words, I can always meet with a team member at least for a portion of the working day. There, if you had Japan versus the East Coast of the U.S., I believe it's extremely difficult to get a normal time for a call like this one. But as we're doing right now, you're based in the U.S. For me, it's the afternoon. For you, it's the morning. Totally doable. And the same applies in reverse if I have a chat with my team members in Asia. But yeah, sometimes sales, requires urgency, and I cannot be there 24 hours a day. So that is definitely a challenge.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies, it's interesting what you said that sales sometimes requires urgency, because I think a lot of companies will set expectations that the sales team isn't always online and that we'll get back to your email when we are online or when we're available, and that's cool. And I actually, a lot of times, in a lot of cases, I appreciate that approach because it's good to set boundaries and expectations with clients. And that's a lot of times the biggest challenge is setting expectations wrong and then the customer being like, why aren't you here? Well, if you had told someone you're going to be there in an hour and you're there the next day, that's the issue. But I've found at WP Buffs, where we do 24/7 support, that sales actually having urgency in terms of the timeliness of sales is really important to be able to translate into that. Well, we're supporting you 24/7, so you need to you need to be feeling that right away when you first interact with us. If you book a call with us, or if you email us, you should probably hear back from us same day. I don't want to do it to the point of pressuring the team to you have to hit this quota or get this many emails a day. But in general, hitting those is going to be really helpful for converting customers who are going to have that expectation of well, if you're a high performing company in terms of your operations or 24/7 operations, well, then I need to be able to feel that during the sales process, or I may have a disconnect as a potential customer. I don't know.
Yeah, so true. I think what you said at the beginning there is true as well. I mean, you got to always under promise and over deliver, never the other way around. That's really a key factor in selling or communicating, effectively. Like, you don't want to build distrust by overpromising. And we actually, frankly, we gain a lot of business from disillusioned customers who were overpromised something from another provider in our industry, and then come to us, and they're really open about it, sometimes even halfway traumatized, because I understand that, like, it's your whole business that depends on being online, being quick, being secure, all the facets that encompass good hosting. And it just hurts to see it, because it also gives a bad name to the already tarnished reputation of sales in general, you could argue. So yeah, we really do want to under-promise and over-deliver on the one hand. On the other hand, yes, we also do want to be there as much and as quickly as possible, because yes, that is true with your business as it is with ours. We also have 24/7 support as really such a key feature of the product. Every time you see reviews of Kinsta, in our case, you see support is mentioned, I think, like 8 out of 10 times at least, as the most valuable asset of the product. Because yeah, it doesn't matter where you are as a customer, it doesn't matter what technical capabilities you have, you get premium support within 2 minutes on average, 24 hours per day, including the weekends. Mm-hmm. So I agree that the sales experience, which is often the very first touch point you have, at least in terms of a human-to-human interaction with a business, should come close to that. And that's definitely what we're trying to do. And we're taking big steps. I mean, we had a sales team that consisted of 3 people last year in April, around the time it was truly being formed in its current shape, right? And it was myself, it was another seller in the United Kingdom, and a seller based in Canada. So there's no way that we can serve 8 languages 24 hours per day. No way. Now we have these multiple people in multiple languages, and we can do 24 hours every working day. And we have a lot of elaborate systems in our sales stack, a lot of automation to make sure that when people do reach out to us, they get a response as quickly as possible. There's a lot of sophistication in there. We can talk about it, but yeah, it's true. You got to be there. You got to be there quick. Speed wins the deal, is what they say in sales.
I think in a lot of contexts that is true.
Sure.
I would love to dive a little bit into the actual sales funnel at Kinsta. So the context, I think, is probably important. For people who know Kinsta, hosting company, pretty big hosting company. Kinsta's has not raised funds in its history. It is a revenue-funded company, which is probably important context for people to understand. But you've still grown at a tremendous rate, and you marked here when we were booking the call. Kinsta's obviously over, $83K MRR, so higher, more than $1 million business, as WP Buffs is too. So, and Kinsta's significantly bigger than WP Buffs. So, I don't know exactly what MRR point you're at, but it's you're competing with all the other hosting companies. So, I think safe to say you have some money to spend in terms of sales process, just investing in across the business, but specifically in sales in general, since that's what we're talking about today. The funnel, or the sales funnel at Kinsta, is probably going to look significantly different than $100,000 a year business. So also important context for people to think of. But Kinsta started as a smaller company too, and maybe just expanded those smaller sales processes into, maybe just a scaled version of that. So actually, maybe some of those are pretty similar. But I'd be interested to hear in general, what do new customers, what's their sales process that they go through? Do they usually have a live chat with you? Do they usually book a call? I can see like on Kinsta.com, you can book a demo call with someone. Is it usually just kind of via email? Do you have a different customer segments who do different things? I assume like enterprise kind of customers are going to be, they're going to need 3 calls, with 3 different people on all the calls, getting all the signatures or whatever. But, maybe someone who's looking at a $20 a month plan, maybe they just jump in live chat and then buy something. So yeah, I know that was a few questions, but what does it look like?
That's true. Yeah, but I get what you're saying. And it is actually, I think we could say that we do have a sales process. Of course we do, right? We have a sales strategy is maybe the better word, but we don't want to put people through that process. Instead, we really try to help them where they're at in their buyer's journey. So we really try to be customer centric in that regard, and not make sure that we tick every box in the process that we've defined. So it's definitely not the case that, there is a enterprise lead coming in. Well, now we have to do 3 demos, and we have to do this, we have to do that. Sure, it happens, and there's certainly a correlation there. But there's also scenarios where a large enterprise customer joins us after going through 1 or 2 live chats, and that's it. Because the process is all about inbound, and the short version of inbound is basically, in the classical sense, if you're trying to grow a business, the idea was, hey, we're going to shout from the rooftops, here we are, and here's how great we are. Come to us. It's like you're fishing in the sea. You're throwing out the bait and hope that a big fish bites. And you're kind of sitting there waiting and pulling and pulling and pulling when they come in. Whereas with inbound, you kind of take the opposite approach, and you take a look at, okay, who are we really serving with what we're doing? And then how can we meet them along the way, so that whilst they're on their journey to solve a certain problem they're having, Kinsta comes top of mind naturally as a solution. And the big ingredient of that is content marketing, which you alluded to already at the beginning there. Whenever you search for Kinsta, search for any WordPress problem, we have a dedicated content team that is pumping out helpful article after article, and now even YouTube videos. People are finding us, and so when they arrive with sales, often they've already been through a lot of touch points with Kinsta. They've already made up their minds sometimes to a significant degree, and we're just there to help them answer the last questions, because they may have some very individual cases that warrant those questions, right? So on the one hand, organically, we're definitely trying to get as many new customers, happy customers that way, of course, and they can. This is all self-service type of thing. But there are also customers that need custom plans, or they just need to speak to a seller. And this, I think, also alludes to a point that I made in the kind of questionnaire to this podcast is sales is always going to be an essential ingredient for any business, I would argue. Like you're not going to get around selling, even if you don't enjoy it or something like that. But does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. I want to ask a follow-up question about sales being an essential ingredient, because I think part of me agrees in the sense that people want to get to know a company and have some interaction, usually with the company, before they buy something. And in a lot of cases, speaking with a person or jumping on a video chat is the most easiest touch point to have a really personal interaction with someone. Like you and me on this video right now, I can see your face, you can see my face, we can read each other's body language. There's a lot that gets translated there in terms of building trust. Part of me, though, also thinks that the sales team and the things you're learning from sales calls and the things you're learning from people asking you questions during email, some of that can probably be translated into marketing efforts that could potentially have people answer their own questions, maybe in a help center or maybe just on the sales page on the website, where you may be able to minimize the number of calls you have to book just because you're able to do that. There's also just video now where you could record a video. I would agree with you with what you're probably thinking, which is that being able to talk with someone is maybe a little more helpful than just watching a video of someone describing a question someone looked up. But it could have the same effect that you see someone at the company that builds trust in itself. And then there's also being able to maximize your ability to answer other people's questions through maybe doing some sales, but also translating that into marketing efforts, into video. Maybe there's also some asynchronous stuff you could do. There's like this new app out called Zip Message, which is like, it's like video back and forth to people. So like you can do a video call. It's just not in a half an hour call. It happens over 3 days because you spend, 30 seconds here, 30 seconds here shooting video back and forth. I don't know. I guess that all could fall under sales, right? Like that's all still, there's a piece of it that's sales, but what do you think about that argument that in terms of like, do you think every business needs to be doing sales calls, or do you think businesses could get away with finding a different way to be able to convert new customers?
Well, it's a great question, and I would say research who you're serving and what is the way that they prefer to interact with vendors. Really, that is the most the furthest I can go in answering that question. I don't want to paint too broad of a brush here. Now, I think the other question that's kind of behind this is sales really necessary for every business? Is a very interesting one, and one that has intrigued me for years as well. And the thing is, I am by no means am I a natural born seller or anything. Like until I was 18 years old, you could argue almost I was barely able to speak coherently, let alone listen properly to people. I never thought I would end up in sales. And initially, I really was more involved with marketing. That's the path I chose in my studies, and it's definitely a skill set I try to keep up and practice as well. And so at some point, I even thought, hey, what you're saying is all true. If we, for example, get a frequently occurring question in sales conversations, why not try to answer that question preemptively in marketing material? And we do. And, you see that's kind of a big portion of the content you see on the Kinsta website has been informed by a lot of sales questions. And for a long time, I would say pre-Kinsta, for a long time, for like 5-6 years while I was in sales, I was actually thinking, hey, yes, I'm in sales, but in a weird way, the goal of sales is kind of to make itself redundant. Like at some point you would think, okay, we've been through all the questions, we've had all the scenarios you can think of, and we've kind of put them all into a knowledge-based article so that people can self-help and organically find their way. And I'm sure that does happen, absolutely does, and you should do it. But what I've realized is, if you look at Kinsta, it's probably one of the most extensive efforts out there in terms of all that content production to simulate the self-service aspect of things. Well, people are still reaching out, and it's still just increasing. People are still asking for sales and talk to sales in many ways. So that fact alone has made me kind of turn around on that idea and realize, well, there's always going to be people that want to have an interaction with a human in one way or another, whether it be a live chat or a phone call, or like you said, through new technologies with asynchronous video. That's all valid. So yeah, that amounts may be decreasing relatively. I've seen studies that in generations that number is definitely decreasing. But then again, you could argue, in emerging markets, internet's adoption is still increasing. So the overall number, especially for a globally oriented company, is going to just increase. And, we're seeing that. So yeah, people are still asking to talk to sales. Hence, my belief is that sales is at least worth a try. If you've never tried it, you should definitely try it, because you might be missing out.
I think that's definitely true. I think everyone should try having demo calls or book a sales call. It should be tried. And I really like the idea of a lot of your content comes from people with sales questions. Like we similarly we're like, how do we generate content? Obviously, there's like keyword research. Kinsta and WP Buffs are both like pretty powerful in the SEO space. Like we both have articles that show up a significant amount when people are Googling for all sorts of different stuff. So keyword research for both of us will be like, yeah, that's a good way to see what people are searching for so you can answer good questions. But there's also like forums online. There's like, communities where people are talking about different stuff around WordPress, and you can be part of that community. And that's also another place you can get good questions to answer. But sales is maybe the best one, because people who are in the sales process are asking these questions. Like if you're going to answer questions for someone, from like a financial perspective, probably like potential leads are like some of the best people too, because those are the people who, if you answer their questions, they could give you money, So I think that's a good thing. I want to follow that up though with like you manage a big sales team. And one of the challenges we've had at WP Buffs around sales is setting the exact right expectations for people during the sales process that they will experience when they have purchased a subscription from us. And it's not because we are like maliciously like we do X, Y, and Z when we like don't do X, Y, and Z. Like it's not that. But there are times when operations changes pretty frequently. Like we do things differently in operations, and sometimes those like that communication from like operations to sales, like to marketing, that can be a challenge for all the team leads at WPF to like just know what's going on across the company. It's like one of the things that Nick especially is like working on right now. So I guess my question for you is, in terms of the sales team and managing a multi-language, multi-person, a lot of people sales team, how are you managing that expectation setting in terms of, I don't know how many sales conversations you have a day. It's probably a lot. I'm sure you can't read or step into every single call that's happening. So what's the process like of just like managing the sales team and making sure that what they're telling people is what's current, hasn't been changed since last week, is setting them up for success to move it to sign up, go through onboarding, and be successful with Kinsta hosting, with Dev Kinsta, with all that stuff. Tell me a little bit about that expectation setting and how you tackle that as a big sales team.
Yeah, absolutely. So it all starts with training when they join, and training, a big part of that is for many people who are maybe just totally new to the WordPress industry or hosting or both even. It's an intensive, laborious period of time that can take multiple weeks or months. Because we want to make sure that they have the foundations down, that they know what it is that they're selling, and that the expectations they are setting are correct. So training involves a lot of studying of material that we have produced specifically for training purposes. There's interactive courses and quizzes and certifications to get as a seller before you're allowed, let's say, to be thrown out there in the wilds with a real lead. There's a real build-up process from day one joining. I'm totally green to everything that I'm going to talk about as a seller, to maybe around day 20 to 30. Hey, we're going to practice our first sales conversation, and I'm just there, or another sales team member is there, really playing a persona, playing a fake lead, and we just have these fake sales conversations to kind of make sure the fundamentals are covered, and if we spot any inconsistencies or mistakes, that's the place to kind of take it out already. So we definitely invest a lot in training, and that way we can trust our sellers after they've gone through that extensive training. Now you're ready to tackle these questions, but we also always, keep in mind as a team, as a culture, we have a culture where if you're not 100% sure that what you're saying is accurate, double check it. Always. So that happens in multiple ways. We have obviously there's kind of a step process. Sometimes you can find the answer yourself. If you are not sure, you can search on our own website, the public-facing information, and see if the question is answered there. Often it is. We may have an internal knowledge base, same story. But even if those two do not provide the answer, there is an internal Slack space where we make sure that we answer questions from our sellers accurately and quickly, not just via the sales team itself, but if they have technical questions, they jump to the support channel, so to speak, and technical support engineers who know our product through and through step in to provide technical details every day, day in, day out. That is kind of already, I think, what creates a good foundation there, and what allows us to really trust that our sellers are setting the right expectations. It doesn't end there, though. Obviously, we're training and coaching is an ongoing effort. So I, as a leader of the team, I conduct regular pipeline reviews, weekly one-on-ones with my sellers where they propose or I present anything I may have found to correct any expectation setting that may have been wrong. Internally, I get those forwarded from other team members as well, because in support, those things may be discovered and then forwarded, and we learn from it together, and vice versa too. So that is all really powerful. And, those are really powerful ways, I should say, to make sure that the expectations are set correctly. And another one that I think is not very well known at all, so kind of a scoop for you here in this podcast. Obviously, sellers, we're money driven to a certain extent. We like to make money for the business that we work for, but we also want to get a fair share as a result of it. But I think, and that's called commission. You can earn commission for deals that you sell in addition to your base pay. Now, many companies and sales organizations may opt for a simple commission structure. In other words, hey, you're bringing home this customer. This is the deal, the value of the deal, or the value of the initial transaction, so to speak. So here is your commission for that deal, and that's it. And, whatever happens after the transaction is no longer the seller's problem. So support will take care of it. I got my commission, I got my sale, and it's all good. Well, that's the opposite way of how we run things in our sales organization. The way we work is that our commission structure is based on a 6-month period after the initial transaction. And it includes also our 30-day money-back guarantee, because any customer that signs up for a platform can cancel within 30 days and get a full refund, no questions asked. What that also means is no revenue generated for the Kinsta business equals no commission earned by the seller. However, the opposite is true as well. If the revenue generated by the customer you closed stays consistent or even grows, your commission also grows over that 6-month period. But the thing that makes all of that possible in the first place is, bringing home a happy customer that stays with us in the long term. So by design, even the whole system, as if that's needed, because I deeply trust all of our sellers already, but there is not even a high need for trust by the way we've designed the commission structure, which is really cool to see. And I really see that we very, very rarely and never through, wrong intentions or malicious intent at all do we see any kind of problems arise from expectation setting in sales. So yeah, those are kind of the 3 key factors I could answer the question with.
Yeah, I think that commission structure is super interesting because it kind of marries the best of both worlds. I think a lot of people have been hesitant to do commission structures because they're thinking about that simple commission structure. You get paid for a deal that goes through. Well, if someone has a potential deal and they're not a good fit for Kinsta, someone could be like, hey, I'm going to make $1,000 on this deal, so I'll just close it, right? And even if you trust your sales team enormously, especially as you grow and scale and you have, instead of 2 salespeople, you have 50 salespeople, you increase the chances that you may have 1 or 2 people on your team who may be more interested in making that commission. But you minimize that risk by making it a 6-month commission structure. And I would even say, even more than minimizing the risk, you maximize the culture of, I want to bring on happy customers who are going to have, be successful with Kinsta, because that leads to things like low churn rate and high lifetime value, which are good for the business as well. And maybe even the most important is that it's benefits the business in the long term. That's one of the reasons I've always really respected Kinsta. Is I never see Kinsta do anything short term, investing all this time and energy into multi-language. That's not going to have a huge effect probably today, but you're looking at 5 years from now. You're looking at maybe 2 years or 3 years or 5 years. And then in terms of commission structure, hey, you're building a successful sales team for not today, getting the payout today. It's for being successful 6 months from now and a year from now and 2 years from now. And then it also kind of magically builds in
It
like
definitely does.
closeness and culture. I think that has like this invisible, maybe secondary benefit of like people don't want to, they'll be maybe less likely to leave Kinsta and go somewhere else because, hey, I have this. Well, it's not just about that commission coming in 6 months, but it's about like this ongoing, like it's my job to do this sales process and to like continue to make sure the people I've converted into customers have been successful. And that like gives you more of a motivation to take care of, the people who you've sold. So anyway, I like all that. I think
Couldn't
there's a
have
lot of
said
good
it
energy
better.
there. Yeah. Cool, man. Okay. Let's see what else I have here. I did want to hear a little bit about the, like having a big sales team. We've talked a little bit about the, I liked a lot about what you said, just rewinding a little bit to the, like meeting people at the point of the customer journey where they are. Some people are like, I'm building my first WordPress site. I've heard of Kinsta. Can you tell me a little bit more about it? Like, I know I need a host. Can you, that's you guys, right? Okay. That's one point of the sales journey. Then there's enterprise people, right? Who have like, I get all that. Like, I need to know a little bit more about support. I got to get, that's I'm ready to buy. Like, I have, $2,000 a month to spend. Like, I just need to check off these details. So different parts of that structure, I think or different parts of that customer journey is interesting. I want to hear a little bit more about the, like sales technology stack that you use. I think it's probably important for people listening who may be at a smaller scale than Kinsta to start thinking about what the software they're looking like to like do this sales process looks like. Because it probably may change a little bit, the software you're using as you grow. You may need things that like work better at a bigger scale, but a lot of this software works just as well with 3 people as it does with 100 people. So I'd be interested to hear like what software you use. I think that you use HubSpot to some degree, but anything else in there that you use for sales, for video calls, for live chat with people, so we did calls, live chat, HubSpot for email. Tell me a little bit about like the technology you're using.
Well, you recognize it correctly. HubSpot is definitely the bread and butter in terms of our sales stack because it is a system that has all these functionalities integrated, right? Not just email marketing, but also a full CRM. In fact, that's where they're headed in terms of their own product development. They're really focusing on becoming a CRM platform first. But regardless, I just believe that it's really important to have what's called, a single source of truth in terms of your customer data. And I do not believe in spreading it around all these different systems because basically that means you're creating a puzzle for yourself. And, maybe the email marketing data lives inside of MailChimp, and then the sales calls logged live inside of your AirCall voice over IP provider. The emails live in Gmail, and et cetera, et cetera. That kind of goes against the whole idea of trying to map and support their buyer's journey, So having a CRM that bundles all of those together as much as possible is really an essential ingredient. And we've gone as far as you rightly recognize to use it for both marketing as well as sales. And that is super powerful because it allows us not just to see a leads or customers' history in terms of how they've engaged with marketing material, which we have a lot of, but also how that then led to them becoming a qualified lead. Like what kind of actions did a lead take to then decide to submit a contact form or in other ways make themselves known to the sales team. So HubSpot is really where that all lives. And in terms of the sales...
Do you guys do support there as well?
Nope.
Like email support and that's a different system.
It is. And personally, like if I could go back in time and start a business of my own of this size, I would also include that. But there's also other, it's separate, but it does work. We make it work. And but yeah, if you can, my advice would be find a system that you can trust that does as much of that kind of interaction logging, let's say, as possible. And HubSpot does allow you to do that as well as other systems do.
It sounds like you're pretty comfortable relying on one tool to do a lot of this stuff. I think like maybe one potential downside to that would be, well, if you rely on like one piece of software for all your sales and all your marketing. And then next year they like triple their prices and they're like, well, you got to pay for it, and then you're kind of like, okay, I guess I'm paying for this now, or I'm going to spend, 100 hours moving all my stuff to this new system and retraining all my team and redoing all our training software. So it sounds like you've put a bet on HubSpot and that you're comfortable with that bet. Does that sound correct?
It definitely sounds correct. And, I think that applies to many important purchases. And guess what we did to help make that decision? We talked to sales. We went to HubSpot and we talked to sales and got a, gut feeling and, do we trust that this company is going to continue? We pay attention as buyers to more than just the words that they speak, but, the way in which they express themselves. Are they confident in HubSpot in this case and its future and et cetera, and price changes and how all that would work? Like, that's not the kind of stuff that you find on a marketing landing page, So just, segue into that subject again. But we do trust it. And I've used it for many years also before Kinsta. And it just works really, really well. What else is there to say? I guess from a sales operations perspective, in the end, it's just a bunch of data organized in a certain way. HubSpot is just a pretty database, in the end, that's what it is. It just stores information and you can tag it and put it in certain lists. And, you have tasks and deals and all these other taxonomies. Definitely matters. Do it. But also, remember, you don't need necessarily the pretty system in the world. Although I would say in terms of HubSpot, just start with their free version. Starting to sound like a HubSpot salesperson here, but I'm just an evangelist. I'm a fan. Yeah,
that's how they get you.
Yeah, sure.
That's part of their growth model, because I do the same thing. Like, we use HubSpot, and people are like, "What should you use?" And I'm like, "Bro, you got to use HubSpot. Like, it's great." Like, and then hey, now we're talking about HubSpot on this podcast, and people are gonna go check it out. But that's part of it. Like, they do have a product that is so solid. That's like, yeah, totally. Hey, I learned from it too, because I'm like, how can we have real evangelists of our WP buffs like they have for HubSpot? Like, that's a real thing. So we obviously use HubSpot too. And our bill every month for HubSpot is it's probably our biggest software bill. For Kinsta, it's
probably up there.
Imagine how big it is.
Maybe Google Cloud is bigger, but still.
But it's Google. Probably. I think Google Cloud's probably your biggest, but the HubSpot's probably maybe your second, third, fourth, right up there. But in terms of the total revenue generated, it's probably somewhat similar ratio is what we have. So I think the and it's interesting to what you're saying about their sales process is really good. Their sales team is amazing. Everybody I talk to is great, and then they follow up with me 3 months later or 6 months later, not as an annoying upsell, but just as check in and telling me about new features. And I'm sure it's all through their HubSpot system, but it's they're really I've had a few people on HubSpot from HubSpot on this podcast just because I'm hey, yo, you're cool. Jump on the podcast. It's a great team. And I'm following them as one of the, because we are invested in them too. As I'm sure you've heard news recently that their CEO Brian Halligan stepped down, and Yamini Rangan, I want to make sure I say her last name right, is now the CEO as of, they announced it a few weeks ago. So those are things I track.
Definitely new leadership. What's going to happen?
We put a big investment in. Yeah, what's the future of that company look like? We pay them 4 figures a month, which is not as big as probably their biggest customers. But hey, I want to know. Should we? If we want to be spending instead of $2,000 a month, well, we could easily be spending $5,000 a month or $8,000 a month for more stuff. Are we making that bet? So I'm sure Kinsta is somewhat similar.
Yeah, but I also would say, and I think you actually just gave a great example of it, in the end, you can have all the wonderful, sophisticated technology in the world. It's still the way you use it that matters most. So the fact that, the HubSpot team in this case themselves, use the technology to find you with relevant product updates, to check in with you, to, provide you with a delightful sales or customer experience, as they would call it, that's still a function of the mindset set the company culture that company has, and that I believe at Kinsta we're also cultivating with our sales team. So, technology gets you super far, and I do believe in automating away as much as possible, and HubSpot is a great way to do it. There's other ways too.
Those workflows, baby.
But
they're great.
Oh yeah. Oh, don't get me started about workflows. You could be here for 6 hours.
Another episode. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it. But it's still all that we're trying to do when setting up this whole sales stack with other tools as well is facilitating and enabling our sellers to do their best work. They still got to put in the work. They have to, provide an experience to our leads that is helpful, that is relevant, that is personalized, and that is also well-timed. And technology is just there to help you do it. It's not there to do the job for you, So sales is definitely still a skill that you've got to build. But as that skill evolves, you find that your need for technology to support your new level of skills, and we try to just have a super high level, also evolves. And that's where now we find ourselves with HubSpot Enterprise and all these features. We have a tool called Dub that we use to actually send these asynchronous video messages that you also spoke of. Works really, really well. We actually also have a tool that is relatively unknown, I believe, and it's kind of spooky to some people because it is an AI-based personality analysis tool. So that's a mouthful, but the idea is that there are different personality types out there, and I don't want to turn that too much into a gimmick. It's called the DISC model, DISC. I don't know if you've heard of it. Does it sound
I've
familiar
heard of that.
at all?
I don't think I've used it personally before, but it's making the rounds. Kind of like the it's like you could be ENT. I forget what it's called. The personality test, but it's kind of the newer one that's coming around. That's beginning to become popular.
Yeah, right. And I think it's important to take it with a big grain of salt, first of all. We don't want to put ourselves or anyone else into those buckets and say, hey, you're this type, you're that type, therefore I'm going to treat you like this, period. But it still helps, and I feel like with DISC as an example, it makes the rounds in many sales trainings as well. Maybe it's like a quick workshop that you attend as a seller, and you find out, oh, I'm a D type, which stands for dominant, which means I'm more quick to take action, and I prefer my sales interactions to go more quickly as a result. I don't want to know all the details. Whereas if I was a blue or a C type, conscientious, that would be the opposite. I want to know all the details. But I feel like, as I've been through that as well with other sales organizations, you kind of learn that stuff. You go through a workshop to say, hey, I've been through a workshop, and then you forget it again. What we try to do is really consistently put it into practice and find ways to help us provide a better experience to whoever it is that we're speaking to. So it's a really new, exciting technology. It's called Crystal. And again, I'm not selling, or I'm not getting any commission for them. I'm just a customer that allows us via LinkedIn data, all public data. It's nothing illegal or something, to get an idea for who it is that we're going to talk to before even speaking to them. So it helps us, again, make a bet on, hey, this person is more likely to appreciate a report building of 10 minutes at the start of the call because they're very relationship oriented and they enjoy, talking about the birds and the bees. And therefore, that's going to allow them to have a good experience with us. Whereas others might just want to quickly jump into the facts. Hey, which hosting plan do I need? What does it cost? What are the specs? Let's go. Let's move, And that's the kind of stuff we also take into account. There are just examples of the whole sales stack. But, I think we're just maybe starting to tell is we try to really we're obsessed with getting to know the buyer's journey, our buyers and what they go through and what they're like.
Lucas, thanks for being on the pod, man. This has been an excellent episode. We've done some kind of sales episodes and sales relevant ones, but this one was like super deep into strategy, how you're doing things at scale at Kinsta, what kind of software you're using, how to go about an approach for sales. And I think a lot of stuff, I'm going to take some notes. I've got a few people I'm going to tag in the WPMR community who I think this could be super helpful for, but I think probably helpful for a lot of different people running WordPress related businesses. So thanks again for being on. Two things before we finish. First is I just want to make sure people can find Kinsta as well as yourself online. So website, social media, all that jazz.
Yeah, well, Kinsta, Kinsta, Kinsta.com, all the social media platforms, you can find us there. And if you want to have a conversation about hosting your WordPress projects, you can find us there too. Talk to sales. I mean, you should know how to find us after listening to this podcast, right? Myself, I am not a very active social media user. I have a YouTube channel. You can search my name on YouTube. And I am also active on LinkedIn, not on Twitter or anything else, but LinkedIn is definitely where you can find me. So just search for my name and I'll be happy to chat.
Sounds good, man. Last thing I'll ask you for is if you wouldn't mind asking our listeners for a little Apple Podcast review for this podcast, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, well, go to Apple Podcasts, find the WPMRR podcast and leave a 5-star rating. I believe it's a star system there, right? Yeah. I don't use it myself, but 1 to 5 stars. Well, give it 5 stars. It's been a pleasure to be here. So I'll definitely go ahead and give it 5 stars as well myself. So thank you for the invitation. I could have talked for 3 hours more, which is always a good sign that it was a fun conversation. So thanks for having me.
Yep, agreed, man. Thanks for the review shout out. If people want to leave a review for the show, you can just go to wpmrr.com/review. Sends you right there if you are on a Mac or an Apple device. If you are a new listener to us here on the show, to me and our guests, also use us, to me and plus guests here on the show, you can go to wpmrr.com/podcast. We got a search bar right there. We've got, I think this is going to be episode 163 or 164. So we got a ton of older episodes. So instead of binging that new Netflix show or that new HBO show, just go ahead and binge some older episodes either on the podcast on WPMR.com or on our YouTube channel. WPMRR community. Lucas is going to be doing an AMA after this episode. I don't know exactly when it's going to be because Lucas, this episode I think is going to come out around the WPMRR virtual summit. So I've got some planning to do around when this episode goes live and around when you'll do your AMA. But Lucas has said he wants to help the community out by doing an AMA. So if you've got follow-up questions for him, like I'm sure I will have about sales, about stuff, how they do stuff at Kinsta, about anything we've talked about or any ideas this brought up that you have questions about, you can go ahead and head to the community and ask Lucas in that asynchronous AMA, which is just at community.wpmrr.com. Virtual summit. Not sure again when this episode's going live, but virtual summit, either it's about to happen in the next week or two, or it recently happened and video replays or the talks and roundtable, the video will all be coming out soon. So if it's in the future, you should attend. If it's in the past, thanks for coming. Cool. That is all for this week on the WPMRR podcast. We will be in your earbuds again next Tuesday. Lucas, thanks again for being on, man. It's been real.
Thanks for having me. Peace.
Bye, everybody.